Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Gym Talk. My name is Cameron. I have here.
Dr. Sean Safar, physical therapist.
We are here to talk about relevant topics related to all things physical therapy related. I have my boy Sean here to provide us with his expertise in this area. And I have a video queued up for us. We're going to take a look at what this guy says about knees tracking outward during the squat.
All right.
So let's go ahead and pull that video up real quick.
Let's do it.
You need to stop cueing knees out on squats. Knees out is one of the most common cues used to improve squat techniques, and it's by no means the most efficient. People cue knees out for 3 reasons. The first thing is they're afraid of their knees collapsing inward. The second thing, they think it's going to help them reach depth. And the third thing, they think cueing knees out is going to help them create a more stable arch at the foot. But what does cueing knees out do in the first place? Cueing knees out biases hip external rotation. By no means is external rotation in a squat a bad thing, but too much external rotation can cause some issues. Cueing knees out can actually make it harder for you to hit depth. This is because you run the risk of maxing out your external rotation, which gets in the way of the amount of hip flexion you need to actually hit depth. And it also gets in the way of your ability to pronate your foot and internally rotate at the hip. These are important for comfortably hitting depth, but also leveraging your quads and your hip extensors as you come out of the hole. So when you fight that through cueing knees out, you dampen the amount of force you can produce coming out of the bottom of the squat. So instead of cueing your knees out, think about just letting your knees track forward. If you found this video helpful, make sure to check out the rest of my page for more.
All right.
So it's interesting because I feel like in the beginning of the video, he talks about cueing knees out as you descend into the squat. But then it seems like towards the end, he's talking about letting them track forward as you're coming out of the bottom of the squat.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, from a coach's perspective, from my perspective, I don't see anything wrong with cueing knees out. I know for myself and my clients, it's helped me get better glute activation and create a little bit more space for my hip to travel, especially when you have a lot of load on your back, and not run into my hip, right, with my femur.
Correct.
So I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with cueing knees out. I understand where he is coming from. As far as like for maybe some people, it doesn't seem like it's not for everybody to me.
Correct. I appreciate what he's trying to do. He's trying to be skeptical and not just blindly accept things, and he's trying to honestly look at things. I think my honest opinion is he's found something that's good and then said, if you do it too much, it's really bad, which is, of course, like everything in life. If you overdo it, you're overdoing it. That's a bad
Sure,
thing.
but for somebody who's learning how to squat, I think it's an appropriate cue to help guide somebody, and then you layer them,
Correct.
right? We're going to layer the cues, and then that is going to create the overall squat. That is just one component.
Yes. So, I like the cue for pushing your knees out, and we'll get into why. What I worry about videos like this is the confusion you're giving to everybody by saying, like, it's good, it's bad, it's good. You have to work with somebody because everyone moves and their body's different. So he talks about 3 reasons, right? He says, the first reason we cue the knees out is to avoid knee valgus. That's absolutely true. Yeah. Because the issue is this. When we have knee valgus under load, we're now putting stress on our MCL, ACL, different parts of the meniscus, hips, we pronate our feet, so posterior tibial tendon, nerves, all these things, right? It's not, look, you do it once or a couple times, it's not a big deal, right? There's certain sports with maybe the technique is knee valgus. I learned in jiu-jitsu sometimes to use knee valgus to have a little bit more stability. Okay. It's fine, right? There's a time and place. Do I think it's a good idea to do that when you have a crap ton of weight on your back? No. Here's why. The second one, I think he said it was to improve depth, and then the other thing was to avoid pronation of the foot, right?
Let me go back to the knee valgus thing real quick, because I understand the importance of doing that, but when you're going for a max attempt, it's kind of going to happen.
Knee valgus? Yeah, so what's happening is this. Your adductor magnus is the most powerful hip extensor in your body. It generates a crap ton of torque.
That's a fun fact.
It's a fun fact, right? The glutes are also really good. But if you look at the muscle, so anytime a muscle is longer, it generates more torque, right? It means it's better at moving things. When a muscle is more broad, it's a little bit better at stabilizing, because instead of like a wrench, right? When you want a wrench to tighten a bolt, the longer the wrench is from the center of the bolt and you grab it, the way more torque you're going to get. It's way easier to move it.
Sounds like physics.
Sounds like physics, right?
Damn.
So the longer a muscle is, the longer moment arm it has, the more torque it produces, right? Your adductor magnus goes basically to your knee, right? It's like your hamstrings and your quads too. They're really good movers, right? Your glutes are also really strong, but they only cross one joint. They're not so long. They're broad. So they're better at providing stability, right? The issue is this. when you're doing these really maximum lifts, if you're not adding your glutes to the equation, right? So meaning we're trying to put on a lot of weight. We need every muscle firing to contribute as a team. So of course our adductors are going to fire. Of course our quads are going to fire. Our hamstrings are going to fire too as hip extensors, right? The issue is if we're not getting the glute activation too, now we run in the risk of too much load going into some knee valgus, right? Do we know how much is appropriate over the course of your long term? What's safe, what's not? No. But we know when we look at studies that people who continuously get into knee valgus are more injury prone. We see this a lot in girls doing soccer, things like that, right? So it has to be population and movement specific too.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a study on heavy back squats and if a little bit of knee valgus is okay. Generally, it's a sign that our glutes are not able to fight the force that's needed, right? So we prefer that if you keep your knees externally rotated, pushing it out, it adds some glute activation. So it's a sign to us that, hey, you're not only using your quads, hamstrings, and adductor magnus, you're also using your glutes too, which is another hip extensor.
Yeah.
Right? So I like that cue.
And it's stabilizing that area.
It's stabilizing that area. When we have stability, we're able to generate more force.
Yep.
Right? Imagine trying to sprint on level ground or trying to sprint on a river with a floaty, long tube, right? You're not going to go as fast because you're constantly not pushing into the ground. You're pushing, your force is going all over the place, right? So that's where stability comes in. It helps lock it down so our force can go up and down or wherever the direction we want, right? So I do like to cue knees out. But here's the thing with cueing. You should only give cues to people when they need them, right? Because when you're doing a technique, if your brain has to juggle a lot of factors. If somebody's knees are not going into valgus, they do the squat, they tell me, yeah, I feel it in my glutes. I feel it in my quads. I feel it in my hamstrings. I don't feel any pain in my knees. Their form looks great. They're going all the way down. I'm not going to tell them to cue their knees out. They're already doing a good job.
Yeah.
Right? If I see their knees go in, it's causing dysfunction, right? I'm worried about their MCL snapping because of the load of the bar.
Yeah.
I'm worried about them using their adductors too much and getting adductor tendonitis, which you and I both have experienced. And they're just not happy with their squat. Hey, let's try cueing knees out and see if it's better. Right? Oftentimes it is. That's with the knee valgus.
Yeah,
component.
especially if you're going down. Dude, push your knees out. I'm going to cue you that cue. I'm going to give that to you.
Yeah. There is a famous researcher in physical therapy. His name is Chris Powers.
I've heard of him.
Yeah.
No, I haven't heard of him.
Well, you should. He's like the research god of glutes, and he does all his research on that and has found so many studies that found that when you're not activating your glutes, it causes a whole wide range of dysfunction. It's very well researched. It's not on the fringe of science, right? Yeah, as we research it more, there's going to be some claims that we're going to take back. There's going to be some more that we're going to add. But right now, one of the things that we know is a lot of people have underactive glutes. When we activate their glutes more, we get them stronger. It changes a lot of dysfunction in the lower quarter, right? Improves it. Mm-hmm. Not everybody. Nothing's a one-size-fits-all model, right? So if somebody needs the cue to push their knees out, I'm going to do it, right?
Absolutely.
There's people on the internet that'll be like, oh, if you watch Steph Curry play basketball, he goes into knee valgus when he shoots a jump shot. Okay, that's his sport. That's his technique. I'm not going to tell Steph Curry. He doesn't have
a whole bunch of weight on this back.
Yeah, he doesn't have. I'm not going to tell Steph Curry to change what he does. I'm not his level of basketball player. Does it come biomechanically with the risk of an MCL, ACL injury? Yes. You're playing professional basketball. You're encompassing a certain level of risk anyway, right? Do I think Steph Curry needs to change his shot? No. He's Steph Curry. He knows better than me, right? But if I look at a biomechanical problem, yeah, it seems at that moment it's a more injury-prone position. But he might have to take that risk in order to be Steph Curry because he's taking a risk every time he goes on the basketball court. Right? We all are whenever we're doing a sport. So that's for me with the knee valgus thing.
Yeah. And then depth, pushing the knees forward. If you don't have the proper ankle mobility, it's going to be very difficult for you to hit depth by pushing your knees forward.
The knees out thing, the reason why it improves depth is because when you pair hip flexion with internal rotation, you often lock out the joint capsule and you get what's called, a femoral acetabular impingement. Basically your femur running into your hip, right? When you externally rotate, it helps clear the femur easier. So I don't have fantastic hip internal rotation. If I don't cue my knees out, I will feel a pinch in my hip. And there's a physical bony block that's happening. When you externally rotate, the same with the shoulder. When you raise your arm up, if you internally rotate it, your shoulder mobility is much less because you're locking out the capsule. You're maybe pinching tissues. But if you externally rotate it, you've now given space for the shoulder to roll under the acromion. So most people, I don't think, look, if you're externally rotating all the way and you're off your feet, of course it's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
It's like we're not squatting anymore. You're trying to levitate and do like a lotus position with 300 pounds on your back. Don't do that, people.
Yeah, it's bad news.
It's just bad news, right? But as long as you can keep your feet rooted in the ground and externally rotate, you'll probably get a little bit more hip room, right? And that's going to help you because not only do we need ankle mobility, you obviously need knee flexion, which most people have unless you're arthritic and old and just don't have that. And you need hip room, right? I like my clients to have 45 degrees of internal and external rotation, but for the most part, until we get there, or even if they do, I'll still have them bias into external rotation because with that load, it gets the glutes going and we know their hip has a little more space in the socket. The last thing I think he talks about is pronating the feet, right? Because when you don't externally rotate, if you watch somebody who has flat feet, there's a fun test you can do to see if it's a structural deformity, like their foot is rigid, or it's just that they have poor muscular control. If you have them cross their arms and twist side to side like this with their feet rooted, if their arches lift up, right? So they twist to their left arch will lift up, their right one will drop.
Okay.
They twist to the right. We can kind of hypothesize that it's not a rigid deformity because it's moving, right? I kind of externally rotate one side, the arch lifts, the other side internally rotates, it flattens. Do the same thing. Because a lot of people, they walk around, they tell me, oh, they have flat feet. And I'm like, okay, let's look. Sometimes it's just not, it's wrong. Their feet are fine. Other times it is. And I say, okay, I have you twist side to side. It moves. Have them squeeze their butt. See what happens to their arch. And if their arch improves after squeezing their butt, well, we've adjusted is, hey, if we externally rotated your femur, your arch is just lifted up, right? When the arch is pronated, it's better at absorbing force. When your arch is lifted, your foot, the midfoot is locked. Right? What happens, it's better at being stable and transmitting force. So when people run, your foot is naturally supposed to pronate to absorb some of the shock, supinate to then propel forward. That's healthy running and walking. When you're squatting, I don't know if you want the force to dissipate into the ground.
I definitely don't want that to happen.
Yeah, you probably want to keep the tension in your body so it can go back up into the bar. A little bit of pronation is probably healthy, but again, we're compounding this by magnitudes of force and repetitions. I'd rather have things tight and stiff when there's a lot of weight on my back than loosey-goosey.
Yep.
So I know what he's trying to do by saying, yeah, if you do it too much, it's a bad idea. If you tell somebody to do something unnecessary, it's a bad idea. I don't think anybody's arguing about that. But I think there's so many benefits to this cue that I see oftentimes that I don't want to throw it out just because of...
Yeah, I definitely don't think that throwing knees out is worth just doing away with completely.
Yeah, there's no one cue that's best. It all depends on what that person needs, right?
Yeah.
It's like there's no one lesson in life that your teacher or your dad or your mom would say that would make you be like, oh, this changes everybody's life.
Yeah.
Some people don't need that lesson. They've already got it down. They need another one. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your expertise and helping clarify some of this confusion.
Push those knees out.
Push those suckers out, baby. That's what I'm saying. All right, everyone. We want to know, what do you think? Do you cue knees out? Do you push your knees out when you're squatting? Let us know in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.